I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Good evening, Americans. Good evening, world. It is February 13th, and it is 8:34 p.m. on a wild and exciting day for, I would say, America and the world, maybe even the solar system. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm at the top of my game. I'm in a very celebratory mood. Nice to see you.
All right.
And look who we have as our special guest, my old friend Ray McGovern. How about that? Hey, Ray.
Cheers,
Jeff.
Ray.
Brian?
And Ray has gotten into the spirit of things, and he's going to imbibe with us tonight.
And what are you drinking, Ray, tonight?
This is some New York State sherry.
Sherry.
I'm from New York. Some of the best sherry is produced there. Not quite what we find in France, but it's very good and it's affordable.
Aha.
See, sounds like me now, although I'm drinking the expensive stuff tonight, actually. For the
What are you
first time.
drinking tonight?
Well, because I am in a celebratory mood, having to do with Tulsi being confirmed and also RFK, I opened one of my best bottles. This is Swiss wine. I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with Swiss wine, probably very few of you, and that's because I think less than 10% of wine that's produced in Swiss makes it out of the country, but you can get it at ddwine.com. This is a gift to me from a fan of Ask the Inspector named Lorraine in Switzerland, so thank you very much, Lorraine. And it's great, and I am feeling wonderful.
Well, let me
we're
tell.
not too celebratory for you, though, Ray. Before, I'm sorry, Ryan, just
yeah,
to
go ahead,
interrupt.
go ahead.
I just realized Ray is a very serious analyst, and
Yes.
he may not be on the same wavelength with us as far as celebrating. He may be very sober about it, very cautious, because an article he wrote in the Consortium News back in, I think, November, he was, let's say,
right.
cautiously optimistic, not completely confident about her being confirmed. Now, that's no longer a mystery, but also not completely sure that she would stand up to the covert action programs, or not.
Well, he said she's going to have to be courageous, and yeah. I reread the article and then all of the jumps, and I was, needless to say, I had to sit up in my chair and just kind of do some soul searching myself, because I had to think, this is not a light and easy task, and she is up against a beast of an institution.
But we're jumping ahead. I just felt like maybe we're celebrating too much, and that's not totally respectful to Ray. But before we get into what are you drinking, Ryan?
So what I am drinking, something that is very popular here in Texas, is Tempranillo wines, although this one is from the Ana Diogo Draper winery in Portugal, and it's actually pretty moderately priced. I got it for $12.99. Actually, it came as part of the case from Naked Wines from our friend Samantha Sipes in North Carolina. So this is just one I've been hanging on to, and it's pretty tasty. Needs some pizza to go with it, though.
All right, there you have it. Ray McGovern has a very impressive resume. It would take all night to go through it, but in particular, he's one of the founding members of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, longtime former CIA analyst, served under multiple presidents. He presented the Presidential Daily Brief to President George H.W. Bush. And because that is Tulsi Gabbard, or one of Tulsi Gabbard's responsibilities,
Sure.
I thought that Ray would be absolutely the perfect guest to have, and we are so happy to have you, Ray. So are you on the same wavelength with us as far as our celebratory mood or not?
I very much am, Jeff. I think that her nomination and now her confirmation is something to applaud. It's somewhat of a mystery as to why she stands out from all the others. Almost all the others I would not celebrate. They may be better than their predecessors, but comparisons can be invidious. In any case, with respect to Tulsi, I know her. I have briefed her when she was in the House of Representatives. She is one very smart person, and she doesn't bend to the prevailing winds, which is really important here. So courage, she has courage. She's demonstrated that. She wouldn't rise to the bait to call our friend Ed Snowden, my friend Ed Snowden, a traitor. She just wouldn't do it, There were lots of reasons not to do it. But, a lesser person, oh, all right, you want to call him a traitor? All right, he's a traitor. She's not that kind of person. So, as I suggested in that very early piece I wrote for Consortium News, I forget when that was. I think it was about 2 months ago.
November 14th, actually.
Wow. Okay. So it's going to take not only courage, it's going to take real presidential backing to allow her to play a constructive role. Now, you could see the warmth of that swearing-in ceremony. I think the omens are good, but the powers that be in the deep state, the hurdles that she will have to overcome are formidable, as Ryan suggested before. When Trump came in the first time, when he was still president-elect, on the 2nd of January, Chuck Schumer called up Rachel Maddow and said, Rachel, I got something really important. Can I come over tonight? And said, oh, sure. What is it? I'll tell you when we get there. So you have to see this Rachel show. Chuck, you've been saying something about the intelligence community. What is it? And here's Schumer. This is a verbatim. Well, I thought Trump was a pretty smart businessman, and that he would take on not too much, but he's done a very foolish thing. Oh, what would that be, Chuck? He's taken on the intelligence community, and they have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you. So, whereas I thought he was bright, he doesn't have any brights on this score. That's going to be a real problem. Now,
Was that a threat, do you think? Was he threatening like he has the pull to make them do something, or he was just saying they would do something anyway? I mean, how does it work?
There you go, Jeff. But that's what she should have asked, right? What do you mean? What do you mean, Chuck?
Rachel,
Ray, if I
could,
if I could ask, and I hope this is not insensitive, you worked for Colby. And when you just made this quote now from Chuck Schumer, and I think about Colby, clearly, and you know way more than I do about this, he was not somebody that just towed a line either. It seems that it's dangerous even at these levels, right? Because you know the story more than I do, but he ended up dying in 1996.
Yeah, under very suspicious circumstances.
Exactly.
So you're right on, Ryan. It is a dangerous game to play with the deep state. And the deep state have all manner of grievances against Bill Colby, partly because he told the truth. Now, I hold no brief for what he did in Vietnam with the Phoenix program. But I can tell you that working directly for him, Now, I was relatively junior, I was not a super guy there, but my boss was down testifying before the church committee almost every day, defending this or that analysis and trying to put a smile face on what the CIA had been accused of. So pretty much I was the acting national intelligence officer for this part of the world. And Colby was very different from the others because he had a real good substantive head on his shoulders. And he knew the game in Washington, and he wouldn't bend to the whims of people like Henry Kissinger. And of course, that in the end did him in career-wise, because when he testified about the family jewels, the spying, all kinds of irregular activities revealed in the early 70s. That was not something that he was really authorized to do. Kissinger told him, no, don't do that. And Colby said, Henry, I'm a lawyer. I'm a member of the court. I'm not going to lie to Congress. And he didn't, to the extent of revealing what Richard Helms, also a CIA director, did on Chile, on Santiago, this coup in Chile, another 9/11, 1973. So yeah, they had it out. They had it in for Bill Colby. Very mysterious circumstances. Very little written about it, but there is one report. I forget what the fellow's name is. I can supply that to you after. It shows how the local officials were just shoved out of the line of sight there. We take over the feds, and there was nothing to see here. Move on. Nothing to see here. Colby, the master swimmer, canoeist,
right,
all of a sudden drowned off the shores of Maryland, I guess it was. So, yeah, the deep state is powerful. And
I mean,
my
Schumer
point here
was right too. I mean, you're saying Colby was telling the truth, but so was Schumer. I mean, that's just the point. He was telling the truth.
Oh yeah. That's a good point.
one way to look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
But Rachel Maddow didn't recognize it as noteworthy
Well,
at all. Here's a more recent. We don't have that clip. I have a more recent one. This is Rachel Maddow being very dismissive toward Tulsi Gabbard.
Republicans in the Senate voted tonight to advance the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to be Director of National Intelligence. It's like saying that I could be a defensive lineman on the Philadelphia Eagles. Sure.
Wow.
I wish she would,
That's funny. So,
well, there you have it.
Yuck.
The
Jesus.
hearing today, I watched a lot of the Kash Patel hearing. Okay.
Oh, really? How'd that
Yeah.
go?
which he got voted through committee.
12-10, straight partisan vote. Okay.
Jeez.
And there were scurrilous things said about him, many of them undocumented. And one of the most scurrilous was this fellow named Adam Schiff, oozing charm from every pore.
No, he was oozing, but I don't know if it was charm.
Was that from My Fair Lady? He's a Hungarian. Well, anyhow, he's got such a record. I confronted him as soon as this business about the Russians hacking into the DNC computers came up. It was clear that the Democrats were going to say that. Obama himself was in it knee deep. And so when the Democratic little think tank, I forget what it was called, for America or something, I used to go to these things when I learned about them. And at one, Schiff started saying, "Oh yeah, well, the Russians hacked into the DNC emails so that Hillary Clinton would lose the election." And that's what they were trying to do. And lo and behold, she lost the election. And so you have Donald Trump, what the Russians really wanted, and that's why they blah 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 blah. So he said that about 5 or 6 times. The Russians hacked in, and we know they did, and all that stuff. Well, luckily, we have 2 former technical directors of the NSA in our little group called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. 2 of them, okay? And then another very senior analyst, okay? And so I went to them and we said, yeah, then
There's the whole roster right there.
Well,
that is
no, is that the
100%.
whole roster though?
No, that's just the committee that prepared this most recent one. We did it in 5 hours, and so not everybody was in touch with us, and so we couldn't include Kurt Wiebe, we couldn't include Ed Loomis, and we couldn't include, most of all, Bill Binney. Binney and Loomis were the technical
right, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that because you said something interesting about the intelligence collection in a previous article that you, I think, referenced in your November, going back to January 2014 with the NSA and what the intelligence agencies could have known about and stopped 9/11. So go ahead with what you're saying, but that's where I was reading today.
Yeah. Well, that memorandum that was written by these 4 NSA staffers, very senior level staffers, 2 of whom were technical directors, showed that there was enough information out there. If NSA had shared that information, there would not have been any 9/11. Now, there was a lot of non-sharing that was responsible. The CIA and the FBI didn't share information. Had they shared information, again, and 9/11 wouldn't have happened. But these NSA insiders, and I think that's what we labeled this memo, they spoke from the heart. And, they knew about these systems. They knew what was available. And when Tom Drake came in, he was sort of a latecomer. He reported to duty as a very senior executive on 9/11, okay? So he explained in this memo exactly what happened and how they covered it up and how they gloated over the pains that the CIA, that the Defense Department, that everybody else was going through. And General Hayden was gloating over the fact that, nobody knows that nobody's coming after us, okay? So that was a terrible thing.
Now, you confronted one of the commissioners, I believe, Slade Gorton.
Yeah, actually, well, when the commission issued its report, it was known, I think it was in July of 2003 or 4, I think. It was known that the commission report. So the BBC asked me to be ready to interview right as soon as the report was released, and so I was right outside I couldn't get into the meeting, but when it was released, of course, I got a hold of the thing, and I looked up stuff and all. So I was ready to go, and I'm sitting in the green room, and former Senator Slade Gorton from the state of Washington comes and joins me. And the cover story as to how 9/11 could have happened was that no one was in charge of the intelligence community. No one was in charge. Wasn't that just really terrible? No one. Well, yeah, somebody was in charge. His name was George Tenet. He was not only the director of CIA, he was the DCI, which is the Director of Central Intelligence. That's the job that's supposed to make sure that these agencies cooperate, they share information. So he was in charge. But they all knew, chapter and verse, and it was all a monster cover-up.
How is this different? This position from the DNI position?
Okay. Well, let me just finish here.
Okay.
What Gordon said to me was priceless. I said to him, Senator Gordon, you probably know just as well as I, having spent 3 decades in the CIA, somebody in charge, not just titular charge. George Tenet was the director of Central Intelligence. He just didn't do his job. So why would you want to? Why would you want to create a superstructure over everybody called the Director of National Intelligence, another bureaucratic label? Well, you know, it was a person who didn't do his job. And he looked at me and he said, right, yeah, of course I know. But you have to appear to be doing something. And that's the best thing we could come up with, a structural change. Come on, Ray. Don't you understand how this town works? So that's how we got the National Intelligence Director, because he or she now would be shepherding all this stuff and unnecessary bureaucratic labor. And of course, the accountability gets diffuse, more and more diffuse once you have lots of layers. So that's the story about how this post was instituted. Now it's grown like Topsy, over 2,000 people in it. It's supposed to be very small. It's very large. And they're sort of replicating a lot of the stuff being done in the trenches, and they're pretending to be monitoring other things. They're pretty much useless, except the new legislation that set up the Director of National Intelligence gives him or her not only the duty to coordinate all these intelligence agencies, I think there are 18 now, but also a role in planning and commenting on and evaluating covert action. Whoa! So, on the books, according to the law, Tulsi Gabbard is empowered by the law to say to the president, I need to see these plans that these cockamamie agents are planning. I need to see next time you're going to blow up a pipeline that destroys the German economy, okay? I need to see that before, because I have a constitutional duty to do that, okay? Now, and I need to evaluate that. Now, what would have happened if when Sullivan, Jake Sullivan in his wisdom, and it wasn't Biden. Biden was pretty much out of it by then. People are realizing that now. Sullivan said to William Burns, the CIA director, hey, we've decided to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. You got people to do that? Now, what's the inevitable response from the CIA? Well, Burns goes to his people and says, yes, sir, of course we can. Yes, sir. Yeah, we can do that. It may take us a little while to plan. We'll get the Norwegians, and we'll get some Navy to support it. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Well, that's how the damn thing went down. There was no one there to say, hey, Mr. President, let me just tell you what's likely to happen in 6 months, not only to the German economy, but to all kinds of A, B, C, D. If you want to go ahead with it, just be aware that these are the repercussions, okay? Nobody. Avril Haines? My God, Avril Haines is the immediate. She just left being a Director of National Intelligence. Her claim to fame is multi-layered, but in this context, she famously said in January of 2022, December 2022, that, quote, the Russians are running out of ammunition, and they don't have any indigenous capability to replace the losses of their weaponry on the battlefield. So, 2022 December, what is it, 2025? That's what? That's it's a long time ago. Is that 2 or 3 years? All right. So that's what she said. And why did she say that? I don't know where she pulled that analysis out. But if the staffers told her that, if people in the agency told her that, there'll be a paper trail now. Hopefully, it won't be destroyed. And when Tulsi comes in and John Ratcliffe, the new CIA director, they'll find out who the people who told her that, and people who told her, watch out, Joe Biden. because after Putin is finished with eastern Ukraine, he's going to go all the way to Poland. I don't think he will stop there. Do you think he will stop there? No, he won't. He'll take over Poland. He'll take over Baltic states. He won't stop there, okay? So what Ratcliffe needs to do is say, okay, now who told him that? And then you ask him, do you really think that the Russians are intent on taking Poland as well? And this will be the answer from the division chief, I predicted. Well, I'm not so sure anymore. I think maybe then what Ratcliffe would say, you're fired. Get out of here. You got half a week to get your blog.
Clear out.
These people are windsocks, okay? What does the president want to hear? Oh, he wants to hear the Russians are running out of ammunition. Oh, no, he wants to hear Putin has already lost. That's what William Burns told everybody in a Washington Post op-ed on the 2nd of July, 2023. So that's a long time ago, too. And a week later, what did the president say? Putin has already lost this game. Now, I went back in the record. I do some serious research, okay? That where the hell did they get the idea? William Burns, is there some crackpot in the agency that told them that Russia had already lost? And, I think it's more likely that because he met with Zelensky a week before he told the president that Zelensky told him, look, Mr. Burns, we got this, no problem, we got this in control. You tell the president Russia has already lost. Poor dears. I mean, hello, here's the head of the CIA. Say, oh, thanks a lot, Volodymyr. The president will be so pleased to hear that. So there's a real big house cleaning in store for these people. There'll be a lot of resistance. And you saw that resistance today as I watched the Kash Patel hearings. All kinds of people have a deep interest in the deep state because they know what the deep state has on them. And they know that they are at least civilly, if not criminally negligent in their duty, so to speak. Do
you think that they're all essentially just exposing themselves?
What's
Right,
that?
do you think that at this point, the ones who are making the most noise, complaining about people who seem to be essentially truth tellers, that they're essentially just exposing themselves as deep state?
Yeah, the problem there, Jeff, is the media. I mean, I watched the hearings. How many people watch the hearings? What the media does with it is very, very different. That's why I jump at the chance to be on a thoughtful show like this so that people listening in can at least know what's going on and hopefully do something about it,
So, Ray, I got a question on this kind of continuation. You were talking about Burns talking to Zelensky. So, of course, the Zelensky Disinformation Center has now taken down all of the articles accusing Tulsi Gabbard of promoting a pro-Russian narrative. Big mistake, they said. Those who are responsible, they're all fired. But now I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, those were some of these things, like the Mirtvorets, I think, website that was the kind of the hit list, were hosted on State Department servers, U.S. state. So now what you're talking about is, one, the DNI has basically been a windsock. Then the CIA person or whomever goes and meets with Zelensky, it says something that Joe Biden or whomever over here wants to hear. So it's now becoming very incestuous. I'm having a problem here deciding who's actually initiating anything. And then just to make it more confusing, back to what you were talking about, Bill Binney and his project Thin Thread, which was the low-cost program. So what I'm seeing here is just, it's all a lot of noise, a lot of confusion. It's a lot of bias that's very expensive. So is the deep state just like a money-making shell game, really? Or is it really nefarious?
Nefarious is the word. Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. He wanted to say military-industrial congressional complex, but he was dissuaded. He crossed it out from the speech.
Okay.
We have the speech. He crossed it out, okay? Now, what he said then in his farewell address was that, he's a general and he'd been around a long time, and he just wanted to warn the American people that this is a real threat to democracy. The growing power, sought or unsought, I think we could say sought, okay, at this point, of this military-industrial complex is a threat to our democracy. And he said that the only antidote for that is a well-informed citizenry. Now, we ain't got that, okay? And what we've got instead is what I call the Mickey Mat, okay? Not the Mick, but the Mickey Mat. Think of Mickey Mouse. Sort of sounds a little like the Mickey Mac. Okay, here it is. The military-industrial congressional intelligence media academia think tank complex. Mickey Mat. Okay, what do I say?
It's a
That is
mouthful.
one long acronym.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there
They're
are
all
these
involved, you're saying, yeah.
key things involved. Okay, can't leave them out. So what do I say? Media, like they're all caps or something. Well, because the media is the fulcrum. You can't do this stuff without the media. Who owns the media? The rest of the Mickey Mat. So there's the problem. I think we're making inroads. I think there are more and more people watching shows such as this. I think our people are getting better informed, but people are not at the point where they're willing to act. And that's what we have to encourage.
And what is
Well,
that?
Let's
go ahead.
expose one of the most nefarious characters in Congress right now. You mentioned earlier Schiff, who is full of Schiff every step of the way. Too bad the cameras didn't capture you when you spoke with Slade Gorton, but the cameras did capture you when you spoke to Adam Schiff. Now, before we play it, I'm curious. It looks to me like you didn't have anybody with you to video it, but C-SPAN just happened to pick it up. Is that what happened?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I used to go when I lived in Washington, all manner of things like this. And this, as I say, was at a Democratic think tank, right? Mm-hmm. So I had asked a question, but nobody would recognize me because they knew that I asked a lousy, damaging question.
Yeah.
So when it was all over, okay, and I thought the cameras were off, there was no reason to believe they were still on. I went up and I just said, this is really bad. Schiff had said about 6 or 7 times that we know that the Russians hacked into the DNC to embarrass Hillary Clinton and make her lose because Trump is their man, right? So I went up there and I waited my turn courteously. And it was interesting. I won't say the whole thing, but
We have it. No need for you to say we
but
have
I
it.
just want to emphasize the intro. I said, Congressman Schiff, Ray McGovern from Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Now, whether that's Schiff or it's Rumsfeld or whoever it is, they do a bow. Oh, veterans. Oh, veteran intelligence. Oh. But he didn't know it was coming, and I didn't know that I was being recorded. You can listen to.
Well, he probably didn't know either. That's what made it so great. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure he thought he did just great. So,
take a look.
By the way,
listeners,
our regular viewers know that Jose Vega joins us at the half-hour mark nowadays, and he's not able to join us tonight. So it's pretty fitting that we have Ray instead, because Jose calls it an intervention when he confronts these people. He has his style. He's a bit louder than Ray is, but Ray is very effective in his quiet way. So let's take a look at Ray and Adam Schiff.
Chief, my name is Ray McGovern. I served in CIA under 7 presidents and 9 directors.
Well, thank you very much.
We have a little alumni group called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, and we've been following this issue very closely. One of our members is the former technical director of NSA. I'm interested in 1 week ago when the president said this, I don't want to misquote him. The conclusions of the intelligence community with respect to Russian hacking were not conclusive regarding WikiLeaks. In other words, there's a big gap between alleged Russian hacking and WikiLeaks. The intelligence community does not know how or if that information, to the degree it exists, got to WikiLeaks. Now, you assert as flat fact that Russia did this. Do you know more than Obama?
I would never claim to know more than Obama. I think he's a brilliant man.
It's a very serious question.
No, it's a serious question. I have every confidence in the intelligence of the Russian hacking of both the DNC as well as John Podesta.
James Clapper is a convicted...
You asked me a question. Do you want to hear the answer?
I will.
While I can't go into the classified information, I have every confidence that the Russians used WikiLeaks. Whether Julian Assange was a knowing participant or, as the Russians would describe, a useful idiot, that we will hopefully find out. But I don't have any question in the conclusions that the intelligence.
You have every confidence, but no evidence. Is that right?
No, I can't share the evidence with you.
Yeah.
Congressman?
I'm Paul
That's
Joy.
bogus. I'm former
That's bogus.
Director of Security Senate Intelligence.
Bogus.
Well,
You tell
that's
him, Ray,
real
baby.
research.
You
That's
tell him.
beautiful.
All right, Ray.
It's bogus.
So Ray,
Standing ovation. The crowd's going crazy, Ray. They love it.
Yeah, I probably should continue about Schiff.
Yeah, please.
You know, he was on the House Intelligence Committee, and when he was still just minority chief there were the Republicans had set up an interview hearing where they would hear the head of WikiLeaks, not the head of CrowdStrike. Okay, CrowdStrike was the outfit that James Comey, in his wisdom, decided to leave the forensic examination of the DNC computers to CrowdStrike. Okay, so here is this Sean Henry, head of CrowdStrike, after 20 years working for Bob Mueller in the FBI. Okay, let's talk about incestuous. Okay, so he comes to the committee when Schiff is just second sort of minority chief, okay? And Schiff says, okay, now, Mr. Henry, please tell us how it was that the Russians hacked in and they took that information and gave it to WikiLeaks. And Sean Henry, you can see him, and his lawyer grabs him. And then he changes his demeanor and he said, well, actually, Congressman Schiff, we have no evidence that the Russians hacked into the DNC. Actually, we have no evidence that anyone tracked into the DNC. We could track that, of course, if there were, but we saw no exfiltration. So I guess we have to tell you that because you've been told otherwise. And so what's the point here? Well, the point, of course, is that if it was a hack, it would have a signature on the internet. They'd be able to trace it. They would be able to know that. And our people in Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, especially those 3 very high-level NSA former employees, made a memo on the 12th of December 2016, a month before this testimony by Sean Henry, and they said there's no way this could have been a Russian hack. We know that because we built the circuits. We know where these things go, and if we didn't know, And if we couldn't say, well, thanks to Ed Snowden, here are the diagrams. This is how, these are the trace routes. This is how it cannot be that the Russians or anyone else hack. Okay. So what it was a thumb drive. Okay. You fit it into a computer at the DNC, if you access to that, and you copy it. You don't download it. There's no electronic signature. Okay. And the thumb drive that's, well, I won't go into more detail, but see, here it is, the 5th of December, 2017 now, okay? So a year after Binney and all our other guys said couldn't have happened, okay? So finally, the truth is out, and it's public testimony, except Adam Schiff becomes chair of that committee with the changes in Congress, 2017, right? And what does he do? He puts the whole stuff in the bottom of the safe, locks it up for 2.5 years. What happened then? Well, John Ratcliffe, who's now the CIA director, and one other person that were flitting around the National Intelligence Directorate and so forth, they went to Trump and said, you know, it's really a sin that people don't know that CrowdStrike itself disavowed the notion that the Russians hacked in. Obama said they did, Hillary Clinton, everybody, but the technical evidence has not been released. You ought to release it, Mr. President. And Trump says, I can do that? Yeah, you're the president, right? You tell me, says Ratcliffe, to call Schiff and say, okay, we're going to release that testimony unless you do tomorrow. And so tomorrow, he released it. What was that tomorrow? That was the 7th of May, 2020. Whoa, what is it now? 2025. So that's almost 5 more years. After the 2.5 years that Schiff and those people in the House Intelligence Committee took the testimony from CrowdStrike. So why is it that those people quizzing Kash Patel today could make believe that the Russiagate hoax, and, you know, that happens to be what it was, deception, how they still pretend that it's the real deal. And Americans still look at that and they say, oh, well, yeah, didn't they hack into the DNC?
But they were saying this even with the Tulsi hearings just 2 days before they took the vote. They just kept saying this over and over again.
It's so lame. It's so lame. Yeah, that's all they have. It's got to be wearing thin, though. They got to listen to VIPs. Now, you issued, your organization issued another memo today, and this was about saying, hey, look at some of our previous memos, and maybe this administration will listen to you. That would be nice. Why, people can read it themselves at consortiumnews.com, but there's 5 of them that you highlighted. Why don't you give us like a 1-minute summary of each one, Ray, just so people know what each one of these was about, what you've been trying to do, so as a taste of what hopefully is coming in the future, and this time they'll pay attention to it. Are you up for that?
Well, I am. Can you scroll down? Because I could address each individually.
Yeah, I can. I'm starting with the first one.
Yeah, so this is the first one. When we wrote this for President Biden, we reminded him that we had already written one for him way back in December when he was still president-elect. And what we said then was, hey, look, you're going to be sold a bill of goods on Russia. Don't get suckered in. And if you need any help on this, we're ready. We have hundreds of years of experience among us, senior experience in watching Russia and other key areas. Call on us if you have questions. Avril Haines, who famously said the Russians are running out of ammunition and have no way to replace it, she didn't want to hear from us. And so we wrote the following ones. This one had to do with nuclear weapons. This one had to do with Austin going off to chair meetings to supply arms aid to Ukraine. And so we just told the president, this is one line we had in that memo. Hey, look, if Defense Secretary Austin tells you that Kiev is beating back the Russians, kick the tires. Now, the younger generation may not know what that means, but when we were buying cars at my age, we used to not only look under the hood, we used to kick the tire, kick the tires to see if the tires were going to last more than 10 miles more. So that was kick the tires. And of course, Austin went off and said untoward things like, hey, this is really about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. Oh, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to just do that. This was January 26, 2023, and it was just exactly a year after the one we had written. This was 23. Okay, so we're saying, look, no matter how much more weaponry you give to Ukraine, whether it's these fancy Leopards that are made in Germany or whatever else, it's not going to turn the tide. It's not going to stop Russia from defeating what's left of the Ukrainian army. So this is January 2023, more than 2 years ago. Now, if you've been told otherwise, replace your intelligence and military advisors with competent professionals, and the sooner the better. Now, this is key, this next paragraph, because it reduces the thing to its magnitude, its significance in a strategic sense. There's a large conceptual and exceptionally dangerous disconnect, okay? Simply stated, it is not possible to both win the war against Russia and avoid World War III. It is downright scary that Defense Secretary Austin may think it's possible. In any case, the Kremlin has to assume that he thinks so. It's a very delicate, dangerous situation. Now, that goes back to our experience during the Cold War, when after Cuba, it was sort of an unwritten rule that you never threatened another country in such a way that they were faced with a choice, a humiliating choice, between retreat and using nuclear weapons. So, to the degree that Austin and his ilk thought that we could do this with Russia, they were just born too late to realize the equities here. And that's why we thought that emphasis on the nuclear dimension of this was really important. Is there another one? I think there's one more.
There's two more.
Yeah, good.
Does this one ring a bell?
Let's see. Oh, we're January 25, 24 now. Okay, so that's what we refer to the one exactly a year before, and we say, look, hey, Mr. Biden, you want to throw good money after bad? We reminded you about Avril Haines and what she said back in December 2022. Now, on July 13th, you said in Helsinki, big speech, Putin has already lost the war. That's what you said. Now, you may have gotten that from Director Burns, CIA director, who a week before wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post saying, Putin's war has already been a strategic failure for Russia. Its military weaknesses laid bare. Both statements are incorrect. Nor is the war a stalemate, as Jake Sullivan had claimed more recently. Russia is winning. Its inexorable march toward the Dnieper River cannot be stopped. For the rest, just to fill that out. And then the most recent one, I think, actually, we finally gave up with Biden. But Scott Ritter, a friend of this program, was asked to write this one. And he did. It took him all of about half an hour. Takes me a long time to write one of these things. Okay, so Scott wrote this one. And it looked like the French were being so delusional that they thought maybe they'd send troops into Ukraine. So what we said collegially, and what Scott drafted, if France and the Baltics insist on sending troops into Ukraine, it must also be made clear that such action has no NATO mandate, that Article 5 will not be triggered by any Russian retaliation, and that the U.S. nuclear arsenal, including those nuclear weapons that are part of the NATO deterrent force, will not be employed, as a result of any Russian military action against the French or the Baltic troops. Void of such clarity, France would be leading the American people down a path toward a nuclear conflict decidedly not in the interests of the American people or of humanity itself. Now, take a look at that first paragraph. By some miracle, our Secretary of Defense said that yesterday. Look, Article 5 is not going to be triggered no matter what our allies do in Europe. The nuclear weapons, of course, out of the question. And it's very clear that if the Baltic states and the other real tough people pretend to be tough, decide to send troops in, well, they're on their own. This is not a NATO mandate. They're going to be, well, we know they'll be crushed, but you're not going to trigger Article 5 on this. In other words, what Scott wrote here, almost a year ago, is finally how it washed out. Now, the tragedy is, and it's a real tragedy, that about at least 500,000 people have bit the dust, have died unnecessarily because Biden, Blinken, Sullivan, all these Arschlöcher, to use a German expression.
Yes, I know this word.
Okay.
Does that mean duty head in English?
Well, Loch is
Loch
hole.
is to, yeah.
Yes, you could use your own imagination.
Is this the Sherry talking right now?
What was that?
Sherry.
Is this
It's
the Sherry talking?
Sure, I don't know. What'd you say?
I said, is this the
Sure.
is this the Sherry talking?
Oh, the Sherry, yeah. Well, let me have a little look up and I'll give you some more.
Now enjoy that sip. You've done a lot of podcasts over the last few years, Ray. Is this the first time you've consumed an adult beverage on one of them? Do we have a world exclusive right now?
Well, truth be told, I always use this. It's not diaphanous. It's not. You can't see through it. Okay.
Right.
And I tell everybody it's coffee, of course, and of course it is.
Oh my goodness! You must be a professional spy or
Well,
something.
this is because of his years in the intelligence community.
No, it's because I'm Irish. This is Guinness in here, and I use an unauthorized Guinness glass. But you mentioned other interviews. Just a couple of days ago, Judge Napolitano played a little clip from Trump saying, "I watched those emaciated hostages come out of Gaza. It looked like they hadn't had a meal in a month or so. It was just so frightening, I used the F word. Okay, I couldn't repress it. I said, let the trucks in, for God's sake. They have all kinds of food. It's because everybody is starving in Gaza, okay? You want to make an exception because, well, these people Jewish hostages, and so they should be give the food to them. Give me a F break, okay? So yeah, I couldn't restrain myself in that. Who the? Okay, enough of that.
One more. Take one more sip and then just let it rip, Ray.
All right,
fucking fuckers.
So Ray, one thing I'm thinking about after all that you've said, what is the first thing that Tulsi and then even Kash Patel, when he gets in, presuming he does, would do?
They'd have to meet together. And then they have to meet with the other chieftains, feudal masters of these other 16 intelligence agencies.
Who don't like each other in many cases, right?
Well, they're all vying for a piece of the budgetary pie, and there's a lot of redundancy. And I'll tell you a little story, which is this helps, really does help. I was in a green room or blue room, whatever, with Admiral Stansfield Turner. Now, some of you will know that he was Jimmy Carter's DCI, Director of Central Intelligence. Refer back to what I said about Tenet not doing that job, just focusing on the CIA and how they could maybe co-opt those agents and not tell the FBI about them, and then have Al Qaeda people that they could tell the president that they had. Not even telling the FBI. Okay, so here it is. I'm in this blue room with Stansfield Turner, and I really enjoyed his directorship. Too bad it was only 4 years. I said, Admiral Turner, I'm really interested in how it was that you were able to get the intelligence community to kind of work as a whole, that nobody played games with you, that even the FBI pretty much cooperated in sharing information. How'd you do that? And he looks at me and he says, Ray, here's a life's lesson for you. So I'm out in the Sixth Fleet. I'm admiral in charge of the Sixth Fleet. I don't need another job, right? So I'm out there. And I get this message that, whoa, President Carter, your old classmate from Annapolis, is going to ask you to maybe be in charge of the intelligence community. Now, Ray, when you get this kind of thing, you say, well, when is he going to call me? About 10 minutes. 10 minutes, golden. You always think, how am I going to make this better? So Jimmy calls. He says, Stan, I'd like you to be my DCI, Director of Central Intelligence. And I say, President-elect Carter, I'm just really honored, but I have some misgivings. Misgivings? Why? Well, there are two hats to the DCI. One is to run the intelligence community. At that time, there were 12 other agencies, okay? And the other is to run the CIA. Run the CIA, no problem. I run the Sixth Fleet, I can run the CIA. But run the intelligence community. You were a military man, and I'm a military man. We don't accept responsibility without having the consonant authority. I don't think I will have the authority to rein all these agencies in unless you make it better. 10 days later, executive order comes out to all the heads of these agencies, FBI, NSA, the whole schmear, right? You will cooperate with my new DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, Admiral Stansfield Turner, and I have instructed him to come right to me if he detects any instance, however small, in which you are not cooperating on an issue that he needs to know about. Whoa! So Stan says to me, and he did, and I did. And there were only about 2 times when the FBI played games with me, but I go down to the White House and I say, hey, Mr. President, you need to call these guys and get them to share like they're supposed to. And they did. One advantage I had, says Stan, I didn't need the job. People looked at me and thought, you're supposed to be part of the team. I wasn't part of the team. You're not supposed to be part of the team if you're head of intelligence. You're supposed to be divorced from all these policymakers with access to grind. You tell them the truth, and you don't have to be part of the team. Now, George Tenet is the epitome. Oh, we're trying to be part of the team. Some of the 9/11 investigators on board were saying, just say George, and everyone knows it's George Tenet. He was just overburdened, and he didn't. Oh well, we'll set up another superstructure. So that's what we end up with. But I think Tulsi is bright enough. Now, a little anecdote on how bright she is. I briefed her when she was a congresswoman. I was supposed to have 20 minutes with her. I had an hour, half an hour. She is a quick read. She wanted to know about the establishment of veteran intelligence professionals for sanity. Why were we able to point out that the intelligence people were lying through their teeth in saying there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and so forth. So I had that personal experience. And I've since heard from my good friend Larry Wilkerson, who also briefed Tulsi Gabbard. And he was briefing her on the Iran nuclear deal, okay? Mm-hmm. Pretty complicated. So he took her through the first 15 minutes, and then she asked questions. And from the questions, Larry discerned she knew all this stuff. She probably knew a little bit more than Larry. And Larry says, so I said so. It sounds like Congresswoman Gabbard that you know more about this than I do. And she smiled and said, well, uh, we agree on what you've said so far. Let me tell you what else I know. So, yeah.
Wow. So this is great that you guys have this relationship with her. Is it possible that she'll listen to you, or is that considered inappropriate because you're not current CIA now that she's DNI'd? Is that going to be an issue?
Not at all inappropriate. Our record speaks for itself. You saw some of our memos just on Ukraine. We told President George W. Bush that there weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There weren't any ties between Saddam Hussein and Al Qaeda. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, which is the fiction that people. And we told him that 3 times before he invaded Iraq. So, do we have a good record? We do. Have we been listened to? No, we haven't been listened to. Even on Afghanistan, we warned Obama. And one memo was called, "Welcome to Vietnam, Mr. President." Okay? I mean, he was advised by people like Bobby Gates and the Divine Petraeus and McChrystal and all these Arschlöcher. And he just listened to them. So this time it looks like it might be a little different. That's why
there's reason to be a little optimistic, maybe. I bet that Bernie Sanders never asked you to brief him. Might that be correct?
No, that's true, and it's not because I didn't badger his chief of staff.
Can you believe that after Tulsi stuck her neck out for him, that he didn't even vote for? Let's take a look at this. Is when Bernie Sanders was running for president a few years ago.
As a vice chair of the DNC, I'm required to stay neutral in Democratic primaries, but I cannot remain neutral any longer. The stakes are just too high. That's why today I'm endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders to be our next president and commander-in-chief of the United States.
Okay, shows a little guts, doesn't it? She knew what the system was, She knew that this DNC was capable of all manner of operations, such as the ones I described, people disguising the fact that there was no Russian hack. There's more to this whole situation. You know who else worked for the DNC and for Bernie Sanders? A fellow named Rich, last name Rich, first name Seth. Oh,
He's the one that died around the DNC hacking.
yeah, he was not died; he was killed. He was
Okay.
murdered.
I was going to ask you about him earlier. This is a tie I had no idea.
Okay, so he's working for Bernie Sanders, right? And Bernie throws the towel in. I'm not an expert on domestic policy, but I was really saddened by
He
that.
caved in totally when it was like Hillary's going to win, so you just cave in.
And instead of seeking advice from the likes of us, he comes out with this idiotic, "We're all sick of those DNC emails, or are we all sick of those of your computer transgressions?" Well, it doesn't have the wherewithal to hang in him. Anyhow, Seth Rich, okay, now you're not supposed to say that, Seth Rich, because you will be automatically called a conspiracy theorist. Okay?
Uh-oh.
Now, I say it, and I'm saying it more frequently now, because there's one court case that shows that the FBI seized the computer of Seth Rich, his personal computer, and his office computer, and had that for the longest time. Took over the investigation from the municipal police in Washington, D.C., where he was murdered, shot in the head, in the back of the head by people who wanted to steal, burglars, by people who would want to steal and forgot to take his wallet or his watch. Or
They can be forgetful.
They just forgot. Okay.
Well, if you're going to steal something, they probably were going for the TV.
He was on the street, right?
Right.
So anyhow,
Oh,
it's
man.
all been very, very suspicious. And The Democrats have made a cottage industry of saying, conspiracy theorists, conspiracy theorists. How could you even hint that Hillary Clinton and her ilk might have hired somebody using maybe the FBI to kill Seth Rich? Now, why would they want to do that? Well, go back to June of 2016, and Julian Assange gets up and he says, look, we have emails relating to Hillary Clinton, and we're about to publish them. Whoa. They're DNC emails and some of Hillary's private emails. Wow. That really hit the fan. That was the middle of June, okay? The Republican convention was going to be the end of July. My God, what do they have? What do they have? Well, it's clear to me that they sent their investigators into the DNC and found who was accessing these things, maybe in a surreptitious way. They didn't hack them, copied them, and maybe they figured, well, who owned this computer? What reason, what motive would he have? Well, he worked for Bernie Sanders, right? And he sees how the nomination was stolen from Sanders. And what more motivation do you need when you see all these gross crimes? So the suspicion fell, in my view, on Seth Rich. Next thing you know, on the 10th of July, he's murdered in this attempted robbery, right? Robbery, but they forgot to take anything. He ends up in this hospital. He dies very much after that. And the Metropolitan Police says, we're the FBI. Here's our we'll take over here. And they take his laptop. Now, here's the latest. There's one court case that keeps going and says, we want the information the FBI has on Seth Rich. Now, 3 years ago, the person responsible for these records with the imprimatur of the head of the FBI says, records on Seth Rich? We don't have any. And then they were caught lying. Okay. And then the judge says, oh, so you do have them. Well, produce them. Well, Judge, it's really hard because we have tens of thousands of them, and we can produce them, but they have to be sorted and put away. How long will it take you? About 2.5 years to do this thing. Now, the judge's name is Masant. He's finally lost his patience. And he said most recently that on the 7th of February, 2025, you will produce these records for the court. Now, the FBI, in its latest appeal for deferral, said, oh, could you wait another month? Could you wait another month? Okay. And the court deferred to that. So look for it. March 7th, next month, we're going to have a yay or a nay as to whether the FBI will be accused by the court in question of gross malfeasance and lying about not having any, and then saying there are too many, and then saying, well here's a smattering of what we need. So now that's Christopher Wray. That's Christopher Wray, okay? And so if Kash Patel, as seems almost certain now, gets confirmed, well, you could see where these guys would be really, really, really.
Well, this is the Huddleston versus FBI.
That's it, yeah.
This might be a stupid question, but if they've been so dishonest for so long, why would we believe that they just didn't get rid of whatever evidence they don't want people to see?
Well, that's always a possibility, and maybe it's a probability, but at least this one, there's this one judge who decides that, look, we're going to, let's see if that is Brian Huddleston. I think that's it. What is it?
It says amended memorandum and opinion order. Government shall conduct and complete by February 7th. It said by document review of information about the CD
Now,
his
the
laptop.
latest information on that is it's been deferred by 1 month, and that's unusual. As I say, the judge seems to be losing his patience. So, what's going to happen? Well, if Kash Patel is head of the FBI, he's going to find out not only who delayed and was unwilling to give these records that the FBI had years ago on Seth Rich, but he's going to be able to figure out a little bit more about what happened. And I think that if, this is just a thought, okay, but I think that if Kash Patel doesn't know who hired the goons to rob, in quotes, Seth Rich, well, he's going to easily find out. So can you imagine how much resistance there is? How many other people know about this? And, I've had people say, so you're accusing Hillary Clinton of killing Seth Rich? No, I don't think she shot the gun, but I think they wanted to make an example of him. And part of this description that I didn't include is that Julian Assange himself, after Seth Rich was killed, hinted that it was Seth that gave him those records, those emails, and as a matter of fact, offered a $10,000 reward from WikiLeaks for those who would find out what really happened to Seth Rich. So this
maybe somebody should pardon Julian Assange.
That would be nice, yeah.
And Edward Snowden, for that matter.
Edward, yeah.
Hey, Ray, if you have a few more minutes, I'd really like to talk to you a little bit about RFK before we say goodnight. Would
Sure.
that be okay? I mean,
Yeah.
Great.
Obviously, the more appropriate thing, or not more appropriate, but the one where you have the most related expertise is with the DNI. But today, RFK was sworn in after the horrible Caroline Kennedy tried to torpedo his confirmation by saying he's a predator. But some members of his family appear to like him, and they were with him today, as a matter of fact, when he was sworn in.
That's just a small segment of that large family.
Say that again, Ray?
That's such a small segment of that very large family, but there they are.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many of them support him and how many don't, but apparently a fair amount do. Ryan, I know, was at a party, and there were a whole bunch of relatives there, right?
Yes, there were definitely a lot of family. Actually, his other family member, this is relevant to Ray, Amaryllis Fox, will be on this group of intelligence advisors to the president. Certainly would like to get your thoughts on that. I had an opportunity on election night to talk with her some in Palm Springs, West Palm Beach actually is where we were. Do you have thoughts on her role as well? Because she was in the CIA, she was an analyst as well, like you, Ray.
No, she was not an analyst. She was an operations person.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, she was undercover. Suffice it to say that, in my view, my view is conditioned by doctors in my family, traditionally trained doctors and health professionals. They have really doubts about what Bobby has said in the past. When Bobby came to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I live now, I went to the big rally. He had just thrown his 110 support behind what Biden was doing in Gaza. Already 15,000 Palestinians had been killed. I could not resist standing up when Bobby was talking about saving all those fish in the Hudson River and shouting out, "How about the Palestinians, Bobby? What are you going to do about the Palestinians? I worked for your uncle, and you know John Kennedy." Well, good news is that no one had given Bobby Kennedy Secret Service protection.
I guess
The
that's
bad
good
news is that the very nice chaps that came and fetched me off this platform said, "Now, Miss McGovern, you got in here because you said you were with the family. It was false pretenses. So now you have to leave."
You
And
said
they
you were
let me-
what were the false
false
pretenses?
pretenses. Well, I said I was a good friend of Bobby Kennedy. He had called me. He had asked for my support. Okay. And of course, I knew Dennis Kucinich. And I said, well, if Dennis is taking on this job, it can't be all bad. But then he said what he said about Israel and Gaza and all that stuff. I could not. So I talked to him on the phone. And I said, look, it usually is a choice, a choice between the lesser evil. I see it, Bobby, as a choice now between the least evil, because there are three, okay? And you're the third. I can't vote for any of you guys, okay? Well, he didn't like that, but that was the end of our relationship. So, to the degree that he has any influence on foreign policy, that's a really bad thing. To the degree that he'll whip things in shape and get off some of these things that my doctor and other health professional friends dispute, well, maybe he'll do a good job. He certainly has enough energy, and what he'll do in the health sector, God knows. But I have, as you could say, I have very mixed emotions. And when I saw what happened after Dennis Kucinich left, and Dennis hasn't told me this, but I'm sure it was over the Israeli issue, the blind devotion.
Well, Scott Ritter also objected to that, but
Yeah.
they overcame their differences about that and found common ground on other issues.
Yeah, well, I can't find common ground with people who endorse genocide no matter what. So, well, I was saying about Amaryllis. Do you remember the Music Man? The younger, the Music Man, the show? Amaryllis was one. Amaryllis was a little girl. Anyhow, that's what it reminded me of. All I can say is that when Bobby Kennedy picked his daughter-in-law or whatever she is to run his campaign, I didn't see much. I didn't think they did a good job. So that's for what it's worth. So yeah, I'm glad that Bobby made it. I don't know what the alternative would have been, but I just hope he doesn't give his noxious advice on Israel to the president. The president just doesn't need that kind of advice, given his own thoughts on Israel.
Well, presumably it's health that he is focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not his responsibility. And
So now
also,
that is not his responsibility.
it's not like there aren't other Zionists in Trump's orbit either, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Well, isn't that really the issue? Maybe Ray, since you went to that topic, some people say, "Oh, Trump, he's so bad because Netanyahu, etc." But isn't it sort of like if you just got rid of the whole AIPAC phenomenon as it controls or plays a role? Let's just say plays a financial role in so much of our politics. Then you'd have people suddenly, telling the truth about what might be going on. Isn't it something like that? I mean, are these people actually true believers? There's very few true believers, I think, in Washington, it seems to me. I was thinking about Charlie Wilson's war, for that matter, from that standpoint.
Well, they're embedded in concrete right now. The only good news I see is that the younger generation, including progressive Jewish people, some of whom I know and are real good friends with in New York, they're coming to the fore now. The real Jewish people have a real devotion to justice. And
There is a
I
tradition
think
there,
we'll
that's
see
for
the
sure.
young people coming saying, look, we don't abide by this stuff anymore. The money, of course, speaks, but who knows? There might be some hope with the younger generation.
Hey, can we take a phone call? One of our viewers is on hold. Would that be all right?
Sure. Mhm.
Okay.
All right.
As long as it's not Bobby.
No, it's not Bobby, according to the caller ID anyway, but you never know. Hey, you're on with Ray McGovern. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm a Tulsi fan from Tulsa, and I have a question for Ray. So it's been 92 days since Tulsi was announced as the DNI, since she was nominated. So what sort of contingency planning do you think have these agencies done to possibly delay, deny, and sabotage her directorship? Can you think of things that happened maybe in the past where that sort of thing went on from your experience? And as her battle goes on with the deep state, will she ever challenge the deepest state, the state of Israel? Thank you.
Great question.
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
Will she ever challenge the state of Israel? That remains to be seen. I think she has a conscience. I think that no one with a conscience can condone genocide. That's what's going on, okay? Now, to the degree that she has influence in other areas, which she will, of course, that's good. But I can't sort of make an exception for this genocide. I never thought that I would be living in a country that is enabling genocide. I was alive during World War II, okay? I know what genocide looks like because I watched all the film reels and all that kind of stuff. So is 2 million less than 6 million? I don't think so. 2 million Palestinians are not supposed to be extinguished, which is really the plan now. So there's that. Now, what was the first part of your question? Oh yeah, are they already
The
planning
agencies.
to sabotage her?
Yeah, I don't even. You said good questions. I wasn't so thrilled with the first question because what difference does it make at this point? He was asking you about the delay tactics that were used
Will
prior
they
to this point.
sabotage? Will they
I
continue
mean, it's
to
over.
sabotage?
She got confirmed. What difference does it make?
Well, no, I think I think the questioner was saying, well, they've had all this time, 92 days to blockade what she might be intended to do, and is that what you meant? In other words, I think that's
Well, he's not on the line anymore. He's not.
Yeah. If that's what the questioner was asking, well, yeah, they have that time. That's why I think she has to meet with Kash Patel right away, and they have to go down pretty deep into the division chief level, and they have to ask, for example, do you still think that it was a good idea to sabotage the accords in Istanbul, which would have ended the war before? Do you still think this? Do you think that? Well, if these windsock say, well, maybe it wasn't the way we said, then you get rid of them, for God's sake. The ones that say, yeah, I was wrong, well, you give them a chance, maybe, but you get new people in, and you get young people in, and that's the problem. Where are you going to find these people? The universities are not training people in Russian anymore. It's all so canted against anybody who wants to see the Russians as human beings. So there's a major task before them. Both of them are smart as hell, Kash and Tulsi. They also are young, and they have a lot of energy. Yeah. And they have, we think, witnessed the very warm swearing in of Tulsi that you showed before. They have a warm relationship.
There's a lot of hugging and kissing going on. That's because there's a couple of chicks involved. Pam Bondi.
Well, these are not bad-looking chicks either. So,
no, they're not.
Of course, we're not supposed to say that here. So, anyhow,
politically incorrect.
I think that the proof will be in the pudding, and I hope that she's a voice for moderation, and I hope that she exerts her titular authority, at least.
Well, how do you envision it working each morning, Ray? In other words,
that's what I'd like to know.
I mean, maybe it differs from president to president, so maybe the question should be, what should they do? But what I'm getting at is it something that Tulsi is going to prepare the written word and Trump will read it, or will they be face-to-face, meeting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes? How should it happen, and what do you think will happen as compared to, say, when you briefed President Bush?
Well, it used to be that the director of Central Intelligence would report to the president through the National Security Assistant, which would be Kissinger or more recently Sullivan. But the exception to that was the personal one-on-one briefings of starting with President Reagan and continuing for a while. Now, during Reagan's first term, 81 to 85, I was one of those privileged to go down early in the morning, one-on-one. Now, one with the president. When the president got into town and he became president, he said, you know, you guys, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the Vice President, National Security Advisor, and later we added the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You take the briefings at 8:30. I like to sleep in, and you come see me at 11:30, okay? Well, that worked like a charm. So on any given day, I worked in a team of two. I would have Vice President Bush. I would have Secretary of State Schultz. I would have the Secretary of Defense Weinberger. Very different people with very different views, but I tell them, well, like it is, okay? And I was speaking not only from the President's Daily Brief, from the traffic that came in overnight, and from, I've been around. I had been around 25 years by then, okay? So that was really, really good duty. They would see the president knowing at 11:30 what each of them had been told by me and by my partner in crime, so to speak, briefing the two or three that my schedule would allow. So that's the way it worked with Reagan. Now, I know that George Tenet, in order to curry favor and develop rapport with George W. Bush, hitched a ride down from CIA headquarters with the PDB briefer. Okay. Now, one of those PDB briefers for the president was Mikey Morrell, cast as an alternative George Tenet. Yes, sir. It's a slam dunk. Yeah, no, yeah, weapons of mass destruction.
A butt kisser.
Place, okay. So anyhow, Tenet was able to ingratiate himself with Bush and W. Bush, and he was the kind of guy, you know, and so Morrell as well. Now, that tends to, politicize the intelligence if you don't have one briefer alone, one-on-one, without his supervisor looking over his shoulder. In other words, that's really hard. Now, with Trump, his national security advisor is Mike Waltz. What does he know about intelligence? What does he know about foreign affairs, for God's sake? So in my view, not only Ratcliffe, head of the CIA, but Tulsi has it all over these other guys. And Trump I think Trump is smart enough to realize that. So were I Tulsi, I would very gingerly get together with the White House Chief of Staff and arrange to have myself brief the president as soon as he wanted to be briefed in the morning, okay? One-on-one. And I do it myself. And she's capable of doing that, okay? I'd bring maybe two or three, maybe one or two substantive experts, depending on what the front burning issues were. So, yeah, I think I see a lot of hope there, because to the degree they can get the real deal, the real scoop from the people who have been telling the president that Russia has already lost in Ukraine, as long as they can get honest people who know which end is up, telling them what to do or what to say, then, you know, there's lots of hope that sensible things can come out.
And it seems that's what Trump wants. He seems from his public statements, even today through the press conference that he gave right before Kennedy was sworn in. I mean, he was very open about working these things out with Russia to solve the Ukraine situation. Of course, he's talked recently about his phone call with President Xi. So he seems to be in that direction. It seems. What do you think of that, Ray?
I think there's great hope on Ukraine. As I mentioned before, what Scott wrote in that VIPS memorandum is now eventuating what we said would be the best thing. On Israel, this is genocide. They're extinguishing people. I mean, I don't know how Tulsi is going to deal with that. As a matter of fact, when the worst statements came out of Trump's mouth about owning Gaza and, maybe not even ruling out using U.S. force and all that kind of stuff, I almost wrote to Tulsi as though I have a direct line to her and say, look, you ought to go away now because this is a criminal enterprise. That's how strongly I feel about that.
Have you heard Scott's take on it, Ray?
No, I haven't. I don't have time to.
Well, he
watch
feels
that.
as you. Well, prior to this point, he basically feels as you do. But his take on what Trump is now saying is that it's a negotiating strategy. Power abhors a vacuum, and so Trump sees that there's no solution. So he's throwing something intentionally outrageous on the table to prompt others to come in with a counter proposal. Now,
Exactly.
Scott's not insisting he's right about that, but he's saying he thinks that very well might be what's going on.
On Ukraine, yes. On
No, he's
Gaza,
talking about Russia
No,
and Gaza.
specifically on
Israel,
Gaza.
Yeah. Well, look at what's going to happen on Saturday. You remember that film High Noon, Gary Cooper, and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, maybe it's before your time. High Noon Saturday, Trump says there's going to be hell to pay if all those hostages aren't released.
Right.
Well, then Netanyahu says, yeah, right, there's going to be hell to pay if all those hostages are not released, okay? Well, only 3 were scheduled to be released at this phase, okay? So what's happened now? Well, the Israelis are saying, well, maybe those 3 and we could keep this deal going. But, the whole thing is so temperamental and so unpredictable. The Russians take lessons from this. Whether they will trust Trump on Ukraine, given how unpredictable and mercurial he has been on genocide, I don't know. But it's I look at it as a seamless garment. I can't separate Gaza from Ukraine and Russia, and I think he's bit off much too much to chew there in the Southwest Asia. I think not only Russia but China, Iran, and others are going to stymie him there. And what will he do then? So,
Or couldn't they step in some kind of collaborative way, since he is at least publicly said that he wants to be collaborative with at least in particular Russia and China, not to address the Gaza thing is what I'm asking.
Oh, to have China and Russia help with Gaza?
Yeah. Is that possible, or is that just...
Well, they have talked to about 10 Palestinian factions. They started in Moscow, then they were invited to Beijing. So both countries have tried to get these guys together and say, look, if you present a united front, that's going to really, really help. So they are willing to help. But in my view, Netanyahu has carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do. It's not my opinion. If we give $8 billion more for bombs of the 2,000-pound and 1,000-pound vintage, and that's exactly what he's going to do, and that will be approved by our Congress. And somebody, I guess it was Judge Napolitano, asked me recently, well, what else did they to bomb in Gaza? Well, 80% of the. Well, yeah. You know what they use? You know the effects of these 2,000-pound bombs or 1,000-pound bombs. Carbon monoxide. What does that mean? That means over a very large radius, not just where the bomb falls. Large radius. Carbon monoxide is spread for those who are in tunnels, for those who are in basements. Those who are trying to escape this god-awful bombing, okay?
Suffocating.
So they'll take care of these Palestinians, take care of them, like a mafia thing. And I just can't diverse myself. I can't unthink that because it's just so atrocious that our country would be involved in that, no matter what Trump's trying to do in other areas.
There's not enough sherry in the world to drink that will make you forget that.
No, but I'm going to give it a try as soon as we're finished here.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Ray. We kept you longer than we said. I really appreciate your time. Ray and I have been friends for many years. I don't know what the hell took us so long to get you booked on the show, but thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Ray, thank you very much. I have about 1 million questions more to ask you, but clearly we're going to have you back because this was wonderful. I've wanted to have a discussion with you for many years, so thank you very much.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Ryan, and good to be back in harness there, Jeff. Just tell me what to do next time.
Okay. Hey, you're on with Judge Knapp tomorrow. What time do you know so folks can watch it?
It's usually 4. It could be 4:30, depending on his schedule.
All right.
And
Watch
that's
Ray with Judge Knapp, and watch us on Ask the Inspector tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week on The Whiners, our guest will be author Bailey Alexander, who has a new book out on the Piedmonte region of Italy, and we'll be chatting with her. So join us at our usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sorry for the inconvenience. I hope that our regular viewers were able to find us at 8:30. And thank you so much for tuning in. And thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Bye.
Right, take care. Bye-bye.